Part 1. Birth of the Inca Empire. High in the rugged mountains of the Andes, surrounded by snow-capped peaks and deep valleys, one of the most extraordinary civilizations in human history slowly took shape. The Incas, who would eventually rule over the largest empire in pre-Columbian America, began as a small, obscure people with no written language, no beasts of burden other than the llama, and no iron or wheel to aid them. Yet they possessed something far more powerful, a set of myths that gave them purpose, and a belief that their destiny had been written by the gods themselves. The story of the birth of the Inca Empire is not just the history of a people. It is a tale woven from legend and faith, where myth guided reality and gave rise to a civilization that continues to fascinate us centuries later. According to Inca tradition, long before their empire emerged, the world was chaotic and disordered. Out of the sacred waters of Lake Titicaca, the highest navigable lake on earth, rose the children of the sun god Inti. His son, Manco Capac, and his daughter-sister, Mama Oclo, were sent to bring light and knowledge to humankind. The divine siblings emerged from the shimmering surface of the lake, carrying with them a golden staff, a sacred gift from their father. Their mission was simple but monumental: to find a place where the staff would sink easily into the ground, a sign that the chosen land was fertile and destined to become the heart of a new civilization. For years, Manco Capac and Mama Oclo wandered across valleys and mountain ridges, guiding small groups of people and teaching them how to cultivate the soil, weave textiles, and build homes. Wherever they traveled, they instructed men to work the land and women to spin and weave. They instilled laws, rituals, and a sense of order. Yet the staff refused to sink. At last, when they reached a valley surrounded by towering mountains and fertile fields, the golden staff slid effortlessly into the earth. The place was Cusco, and here the Incas would plant the seeds of their empire. The founding myth of the Incas tells us much about how they viewed themselves. To them, they were not simply another Andean tribe struggling for survival in a harsh landscape. They were the chosen people of the sun, with a divine mission to bring civilization to the world. The story of their origin was more than a legend. It was a declaration of legitimacy. By tracing their ancestry to Inti himself, the Incas justified their future conquests as the fulfillment of a sacred duty. To resist the Incas, therefore, was to defy the sun. But myth and history often overlap in uncertain ways. To modern historians, the story of Manco Capac and Mama Oclo may reflect the memory of real leaders, perhaps charismatic chieftains who organized scattered groups into a more cohesive society. The golden staff may symbolize the search for fertile land in a region where farming was a constant challenge. And yet, whether fact or fable, the myth gave the Inca people a sense of unity and purpose that would guide their rise. Archaeological evidence suggests that by the 12th century, the valley of Cusco was already inhabited by various small communities. Among them were the Incas, who at first were little more than one tribe among many. Their neighbors were powerful and often hostile, and for a long time, the Incas struggled to assert themselves. They built modest dwellings, cultivated maize and potatoes on terrace slopes, and slowly expanded their influence. Oral traditions claim that early Inca leaders engaged in skirmishes with rival groups, defending their growing settlement and forging alliances. Life was difficult, but the belief in their divine origin gave them resilience. Over time, the Incas transformed their humble settlement into a city of symbolic and strategic importance. Cusco, whose name in Quechua means "navel of the world," was not just a geographical center, but a spiritual one. Here they constructed temples dedicated to Inti, the sun god, and shrines to other deities of the Andean pantheon. The city was laid out in the shape of a puma, a sacred animal representing strength and protection. This careful planning reflected their vision of a society ordered by cosmic principles, with Cusco as the axis around which the universe revolved. The concept of divine kingship became central to Inca society. Their ruler, the Sapa Inca, was not regarded as a mere human leader, but as the living son of the sun. His authority was absolute, his word unquestionable. This sacred status allowed the early Inca rulers to consolidate power, demand loyalty, and organize their people with remarkable efficiency. In a world of constant rivalry, the idea that their king was divine provided a unifying force that no rival tribe could easily match. Yet we must remember that the Incas left no written records of their early history. Their stories were preserved in oral traditions, later recorded by Spanish chroniclers after the conquest. This means that our understanding of the birth of the Inca Empire is filtered through the lens of myth, memory, and colonial interpretation. We cannot know with certainty what is fact and what is legend. But what is clear is that these stories shaped how the Incas saw themselves and justified their destiny as rulers of the Andes. The early Incas were masters of adaptation. Living in one of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth, they learned to carve terraces into steep mountainsides, channel water through ingenious irrigation systems, and breed crops that could survive the thin air of high altitudes. They domesticated llamas and alpacas, which provided not only wool and meat but also transport across treacherous terrain. These innovations laid the foundation for the empire they would one day build, proving that their survival was not merely the work of gods, but also of human ingenuity. As generations passed, the Incas grew stronger. They fought rival tribes, forged alliances, and slowly expanded their control over the Cusco Valley. Each victory reinforced their belief in their divine mission. Each new subject was told the story of their origin, binding them into a cosmic order that transcended mere politics. The legend of Manco Capac and Mama Oclo was not just a tale of the past. It was a tool of empire building in the present. The birth of the Inca Empire, then, is a story of both myth and survival. It is the story of a people who believed that they were destined to bring order to a chaotic world, and who used that belief to overcome the challenges of their environment and the hostility of their neighbors. In time, they would transform from a small tribe in the Andes into rulers of a vast empire stretching thousands of kilometers. But at the heart of it all remained the memory of their divine origin, the conviction that they were children of the sun, chosen to shine their light across the land. Thus, in the windswept valleys of the Andes, amid legend and hardship, the first stones of the Inca Empire were laid. And from these beginnings would grow a civilization whose achievements still astonish the world, centuries after its fall. Part 2. The Land of the Andes. The Andes Mountains, stretching like a colossal backbone along the western edge of South America, are among the most dramatic and unforgiving landscapes on Earth. Rising over 7,000 kilometers from the southern tip of Chile and Argentina to the warm northern lands of Colombia and Venezuela, this range creates a natural wall between the Pacific Ocean and the vast interior of the continent. Snow-capped peaks, volcanoes, deep ravines, and high plateaus define its geography, and it was here, in this world of extremes, that the Inca civilization took root. To understand the Incas, one must first understand the land of the Andes, for it was both their greatest challenge and their greatest teacher. At first glance, the Andes appear almost inhospitable. The air thins as one ascends, and oxygen becomes scarce. At elevations where the Incas thrived, breathing is laborious, and visitors today often struggle with altitude sickness. Temperatures fluctuate wildly, with blazing sun during the day and freezing cold at night. Rainfall is unpredictable, and landslides and earthquakes constantly threaten to undo human efforts at settlement. Yet it was within these harsh conditions that the Incas discovered possibilities invisible to outsiders. They did not merely endure the Andes. They adapted to them, transformed them, and in many ways became their embodiment. The Andes are not a uniform environment. They consist of varied ecological zones stacked vertically like layers of a towering cake. Each altitude brings a new climate, a new set of crops, and a new way of life. Near the coastal desert at sea level, the land is dry, arid, and largely barren. Higher up, between 1,000 and 2,000 meters, fertile valleys cut through the mountains, where maize, beans, and squash could be cultivated. Above that lies the Quechua zone, between 2 and 3,000 meters, a region of temperate climate and productive soils. It was here, in this sweet spot of the Andes, that the city of Cusco and the heartland of the Inca Empire flourished. Ascending still higher, one reaches the Suni zone, between 3 and 4,000 meters. Here the climate is colder, the soil less forgiving, but potatoes, quinoa, and hardy tubers thrive. Above 4,000 meters lies the Puna, a windswept grassland where crops can barely grow, but llamas and alpacas graze on wild grasses. Beyond 5,000 meters, the peaks become icy wastelands, home only to glaciers, sacred in Inca religion as the dwelling places of powerful spirits. This vertical layering of environments gave the Andes a richness unlike any other region, and the Incas became experts at exploiting it. Instead of relying on a single environment, they practiced what scholars call vertical archipelago farming. Communities did not confine themselves to one zone. Instead, they sent groups of people to establish settlements at different altitudes, ensuring access to the full range of crops and resources. An Inca family in Cusco, for example, might farm maize in the valleys, cultivate potatoes in higher fields, and keep herds of llamas in the Puna. In this way, they wove the diverse environments of the Andes into a single economic system, making them resilient against crop failure and climatic change. The animals of the Andes played an equally important role in shaping Inca life. Llamas were their beasts of burden, capable of carrying loads across treacherous mountain trails where no cart could pass. Though llamas could not pull plows, their wool was invaluable for clothing, and their dung fertilized the fields. Alpacas, smaller and gentler, provided the softest wool, highly prized for textiles that signaled wealth and status. The Incas also hunted the wild vicuña, whose fine fleece remains among the rarest natural fibers in the world. These animals were more than resources. They were companions, sacred creatures that held places of honor in rituals and sacrifices. The land also offered rich mineral wealth. The Andes are laced with veins of silver, gold, and copper. For the Incas, gold was not currency but the sweat of the sun, a divine substance used to adorn temples and idols. Silver was the tears of the moon, sacred and powerful. Copper, mixed with tin, provided bronze for tools and weapons. Yet mining was difficult, dangerous work, and most of these resources were extracted not for economic trade, but for symbolic and religious purposes. Water, too, was a constant challenge and a precious gift. Seasonal rains could flood fields or vanish entirely, leaving crops parched. To survive, the Incas developed intricate irrigation systems. They built canals, aqueducts, and fountains, guiding mountain streams to their fields and cities. In some places, they even carved channels directly into solid rock, feats of engineering that astonish archaeologists to this day. By controlling water, they controlled life itself, and this mastery gave them the ability to expand their population far beyond what the harsh land might otherwise allow. The Andes were also a land of constant danger. Earthquakes regularly shook the ground, toppling buildings and triggering landslides. The Incas learned to build walls of interlocking stone blocks, fitted so precisely without mortar that they could withstand tremors that shattered other structures. These walls, which still stand centuries later in Cusco and Machu Picchu, are silent witnesses to the ingenuity forced upon the Incas by their environment. Religion, too, was shaped by the land. To the Incas, every mountain was an APU, a living spirit with immense power. Snow-capped peaks were not mere rock, but divine guardians watching over valleys and communities. Glaciers provided water, so they were seen as sacred reservoirs of life. The Incas offered sacrifices on mountaintops, sometimes even human offerings, to honor these spirits and ensure balance. The rugged geography of the Andes was not an obstacle, but a sacred landscape, a place where the human and the divine were inseparably intertwined. In this world of extremes, community was essential. No family could survive alone. Labor was shared through systems like the ALU, an extended kin group that pooled resources, farmed together, and cared for the vulnerable. Work was not merely economic but spiritual. To farm the terraces was to fulfill the will of the gods. Reciprocity was the foundation of society. People gave their labor to one another, to their leaders, and to the state, and in return they received protection, food, and security. This system of mutual obligation, rooted in the challenges of the Andes, later allowed the Incas to mobilize vast armies and construct monumental works. The harshness of the Andes demanded discipline, cooperation, and reverence for the forces of nature. These qualities became hallmarks of the Inca civilization. Where outsiders might see barren cliffs and deathly cold, the Incas saw opportunity. They learned to read the stars to predict the seasons, to carve fields into mountainsides, and to bind their communities together through shared struggle. The land shaped their identity as much as their myths did. When we speak of the Inca Empire, we often focus on its cities, its rulers, or its conquests. Yet the true foundation of that empire was the Andes themselves. The mountains were the crucible in which the Incas were forged, and their empire was, in many ways, a dialogue between human ambition and natural power. The Incas could not have become who they were anywhere else in the world. The land of the Andes was not simply a backdrop to Inca history. It was a participant, a force that dictated the limits of possibility and demanded respect. It taught the Incas resilience, resourcefulness, and the necessity of community. It gave them challenges that pushed them to innovate, and it offered them resources that, when carefully managed, sustained an empire of millions. The story of the Incas is the story of the Andes, and without the mountains, there would have been no empire at all. Part 3. The Rise of Cusco. Long before Cusco became the radiant capital of the Inca Empire, it was little more than a modest settlement hidden within a fertile valley of the Andes. Today, when one imagines Cusco, visions of towering stone walls, golden temples, and bustling plazas come to mind. Yet its beginnings were fragile and uncertain. The story of how Cusco transformed from a cluster of huts into the navel of the world is one of persistence, faith, and an extraordinary capacity for adaptation. The valley of Cusco was a natural crossroads. It lay where rivers converged, surrounded by steep mountains and fertile slopes. This geography gave it a unique advantage. It was a meeting point between highland and lowland communities, a place where maize from warmer valleys could be exchanged for potatoes from higher altitudes, and where herders could graze their llamas before moving to the puna. For early settlers, this valley was a prize, but also a battleground. Many different groups sought to control it, including the Ayarmacas, the Panaguas, and later the Chancas. The Incas were only one of several tribes who lived here, and in their earliest days, they were neither the strongest nor the most feared. According to tradition, the city of Cusco was founded when Manco Capac, the son of the sun, planted his golden staff into the earth and declared it the chosen place. But beneath the poetry of legend lies a simpler truth. Cusco was a fertile, defensible valley, and those who controlled it could thrive. Archaeological evidence suggests that by the 12th century, the Incas had established a small settlement there, one among many. They built simple homes, cultivated maize and potatoes, and used llama herds for transport and wool. For generations, survival rather than dominance was their primary concern. The early history of Cusco is often described in terms of two dynasties, the Hurin Cusco and the Hanan Cusco. These names, meaning Lower Cusco and Upper Cusco, reflect a dual organization deeply rooted in Andean tradition. Many Andean societies divided their communities into dual halves, symbolizing balance between opposing forces. In Cusco, this division became political. The first rulers, belonging to the Hurin Cusco, were remembered as more religious than warlike, focusing on rituals, temples, and the consolidation of the valley. Later, the Hanan Cusco would rise to power, bringing more aggressive expansion and military strength. This duality shaped the city's early development, combining sacred authority with practical governance. Life in early Cusco was communal and cooperative. Families were organized into ailas, extended kin groups that worked the land together. Each ayla farmed its own terraces, raised animals, and shared its harvests. Labor was not seen simply as economic necessity, but as a sacred duty, part of the reciprocity that bound the people to each other and to their gods. Festivals and rituals filled the calendar, honoring the sun, the moon, the stars, and the mountain spirits, or apis, believed to watch over the valley. This strong communal identity helped the Incas survive in a region where neighboring groups often raided one another. Yet Cusco was never entirely secure. Neighboring tribes constantly tested the Incas. The Ayarmacas, in particular, were powerful rivals who challenged Inca authority again and again. Oral histories tell of battles, shifting alliances, and periods of near defeat. The Incas, however, had two strengths that gradually set them apart: their deep sense of divine mission and their ability to adapt and reorganize. Even when they lost battles, they learned from mistakes, adjusted their strategies, and rebuilt. The belief that they were the chosen people of the sun gave them resilience in the face of adversity. The physical form of Cusco began to change as the Incas consolidated power. Houses of adobe and stone multiplied. Irrigation canals were dug to bring water from mountain streams, increasing agricultural output. Storage buildings, or calcas, were constructed to preserve surplus maize and potatoes, ensuring that the community could withstand years of poor harvests. At the heart of the settlement, religious centers took shape. The most important of these was the Cora Cancha, the golden enclosure, a temple dedicated to Indi, the sun god. Even in its earliest days, this temple was the spiritual core of Cusco, the place where rituals and sacrifices affirmed the bond between people, ruler, and deity. The layout of Cusco carried symbolic meaning. According to tradition, the city was designed in the shape of a puma, with its head represented by the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, its body stretching across the valley, and its tail curling toward the river. This design reflected not only artistry, but also cosmology. To the Incas, the puma was a sacred animal of strength, courage, and protection. By aligning their city with this symbol, they embedded their identity within the order of the universe. As Cusco grew, so did its reputation. It became known as a place of temples, ceremonies, and growing political influence. Neighboring groups could not ignore it. Some allied with the Incas, recognizing the spiritual prestige of a people who claimed descent from the sun. Others viewed them with suspicion and hostility. The city became a magnet for pilgrims, traders, and warriors, a focal point of Indian life. The true transformation of Cusco into the capital of an empire, however, would come later, under the leadership of one of its most remarkable rulers, Pachacuti. But even before his time, the seeds of greatness were being sown. The early rulers established systems of governance, organized labor, and developed infrastructure that allowed the city to grow beyond its humble origins. Step by step, generation by generation, Cusco shifted from a vulnerable village to a formidable stronghold. One of the decisive moments in this transformation came when the Incas, fierce warriors from the west, launched a massive attack on Cusco. The Incas, outnumbered and desperate, seemed destined for destruction. But according to legend, a young prince, later known as Pachacuti, took command. He rallied the defenders, reorganized the city's forces, and led them to an astonishing victory. The triumph against the Incas not only saved Cusco, but also marked the beginning of its rise as the undisputed center of power in the Andes. From that point onward, Cusco was no longer merely a settlement struggling to survive. It was the axis of a new world. The Incas began to see their city not simply as their home, but as the very heart of the universe. They called it the navel of the world, the place from which all roads and energies radiated outward. This vision was not only spiritual but also practical. From Cusco, a network of roads would eventually stretch across deserts, forests, and mountains, binding together one of the greatest empires the Americas had ever known. Today, traces of this transformation are still visible. The narrow streets of Cusco, lined with walls of massive stone blocks, bear the imprint of Inca craftsmanship. The fortress of Sacsayhuaman looms above the city, a reminder of both its defensive needs and its symbolic power. The Coricancha, though altered by colonial hands, still stands as a testament to the central role of the sun in Inca life. Walking through Cusco is to walk through layers of history, where the humble beginnings of a tribe can still be felt beneath the grandeur of empire. The rise of Cusco teaches us that empires are not built in a single generation. They emerge slowly, through struggle, adaptation, and vision. For the Incas, Cusco was more than a capital. It was the embodiment of their myth, the proof of their divine mission, and the foundation upon which they would build an empire stretching thousands of kilometers across the Andes. Part 4. Pachacuti, the visionary emperor. When one speaks of the Inca Empire, one name towers above the rest. Pachacuti, the ninth ruler of the Incas, remembered as the world transformer. His reign marks the true beginning of the empire as we know it, for it was Pachacuti who turned a vulnerable city threatened by its enemies into a powerful capital commanding vast territories. Through his vision, courage, and organizational genius, Cusco was reborn, and the Incas began their meteoric rise from a small highland people to the rulers of an empire stretching across mountains, deserts, and jungles. The story of Pachacuti begins during one of the darkest moments in Inca history. The Incas, fierce warriors from the west, launched a devastating attack on Cusco. They numbered in the tens of thousands, and their reputation for cruelty spread fear across the valley. The reigning Inca ruler, Viracocha Inca, and many nobles fled the city, convinced that Cusco was doomed. But a young prince, not yet ruler, refused to abandon his people. His name was Yupanqui, though history would remember him as Pachacuti. In this desperate hour, Pachacuti rallied the defenders of Cusco. He reorganized the city's warriors, inspired them with fiery speeches, and transformed panic into determination. The battle was brutal. The Incas stormed the city with overwhelming numbers, but Pachacuti employed clever tactics, ambushes, and psychological warfare. Legends say that he called upon the gods, and that even the very stones of Cusco rose to fight against the invaders. Whether myth or exaggeration, what matters is that Cusco survived. Against all odds, the Incas were defeated, and Pachacuti emerged as a hero. This victory changed everything. Pachacuti was no longer just a prince, he was the savior of Cusco. The people hailed him as their rightful ruler, and his father, who had fled in fear, was forced to recognize his son's legitimacy. From that moment, Pachacuti began to reshape not only the city, but the entire destiny of his people. One of Pachacuti's greatest talents was his ability to think on a grand scale. He did not see Cusco as a mere settlement to be defended. He envisioned it as the center of the universe, the radiant heart of an empire. He began a massive program of rebuilding the city, tearing down old structures and replacing them with grand temples, plazas, and palaces. Streets were redesigned in orderly patterns, canals redirected water, and terraces expanded farmland. The Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun, was rebuilt with walls covered in gold, making it the most dazzling sanctuary in the Andes. Above the city, he ordered the construction of Sacsayhuaman, a fortress of colossal stone blocks fitted with such precision that even today a knife blade cannot pass between them. But Pachacuti's genius went beyond architecture. He understood that to build an empire, he needed not just walls and weapons but also a system of governance that could bind diverse peoples together. He reorganized Inca society into a more efficient hierarchy. Each community, or elu, was integrated into the imperial structure, paying tribute through labor rather than coin. This system, later called the Mita, ensured that the empire had the workforce to build roads, temples, and agricultural terraces on a scale never before seen in the Andes. Pachacuti also envisioned a network of roads to unite his expanding realm. Under his rule, the foundations of the Capacnan, the Royal Road, were laid. This system of highways would eventually stretch for tens of thousands of kilometers, connecting highland cities, coastal valleys, and remote outposts. Messengers known as chasquis ran along these roads, carrying messages, goods, and orders across vast distances with astonishing speed. For Pachacuti, roads were more than practical tools. They were the veins of empire, ensuring that Cusco remained connected to even the most distant corners of his realm. Religion, too, was central to Pachacuti's vision. He elevated the cult of Inti, the sun god, to supreme importance, declaring himself the son of the sun and the earthly representative of divine will. Yet he also showed remarkable flexibility. Instead of forcing conquered peoples to abandon their gods, he often incorporated their deities into the Inca pantheon, placing them under the authority of Inti. This strategy made it easier to integrate diverse cultures, as local traditions were respected but subordinated to the overarching power of the empire. Pachacuti was also a master of propaganda. He understood the power of myth in shaping identity. After his victory over the Incas, stories circulated that the very stones of Cusco had fought for him, coming to life as warriors. Whether people believed this literally or symbolically, it reinforced the idea that Pachacuti was chosen by the gods, a ruler whose destiny was written in the heavens. He carefully nurtured this image, presenting himself as both a warrior king and a sacred figure. his conquests extended far beyond Cusco. Under his leadership, the Incas began expanding into neighboring valleys, subduing rivals who had once threatened them. Campaign after campaign extended the borders of Inca influence, and Pachacuti established a model of conquest that his successors would follow. Defeated peoples were often relocated to prevent rebellion, while loyal groups were rewarded with fertile lands and positions of influence. Roads and administrative centers were built in newly conquered regions, binding them more closely to Cusco. Yet Pachacuti was not only a conqueror, he was also a reformer. He introduced new laws to regulate society, organized census counts to keep track of the population, and created a system of storehouses to ensure food security in times of famine. Under his guidance, Cusco became not just a city of temples and palaces, but the administrative heart of a carefully planned empire. By the end of Pachacuti's reign, the transformation was undeniable. What had once been a vulnerable settlement was now the capital of a powerful state. Cusco gleamed with golden temples, its plazas bustled with priests, nobles, and traders, and its roads stretched outward like rays of the sun. The Incas, once an obscure tribe, now stood as masters of the Andes. Pachacuti's legacy endures not only in stone, but also in the very idea of empire. His vision set the foundation for generations of expansion. Later rulers, including his son Tupac Inca Yupanqui and grandson Huayna Capac, would carry the empire to even greater heights. But all of it was built upon Pachacuti's reforms and imagination. Without him, there might never have been an Inca empire. To this day, visitors to Cusco walk through streets laid out according to Pachacuti's plan, marvel at the walls of Sacsayhuaman, and stand in awe before the remains of the Coricancha. His name still resonates across the Andes, a reminder of the ruler who truly transformed the world. Pachacuti's story is not merely one of conquest, but of vision, the ability to see greatness where others saw only struggle, to imagine unity where others saw division, and to build permanence where others saw only fragility. He was the world transformer, the architect of empire, and the ruler who carved the destiny of the Incas into the mountains themselves. Part 5. Expansion and Conquest under Pachacuti. Once Pachacuti had secured Cusco and transformed it into a formidable capital, his vision extended far beyond the valley. He understood that the future of the Inca civilization depended not only on strong walls and sacred temples, but on the expansion of territory, the integration of diverse peoples, and the creation of a network of control that would stretch across the Andes. Under his leadership, the Incas began a series of military campaigns that would lay the foundation for one of the largest empires in the Americas. The first targets of expansion were the neighboring valleys and tribes that had historically posed threats to Cusco. The Ayarmaca and Pinagua peoples, whose lands surrounded the capital, were brought under Inca control through a combination of diplomacy and force. Pachacuti's strategy was meticulous. He understood that overwhelming force alone could not secure lasting loyalty. Conquered communities were often allowed to keep their local leaders, provided they swore allegiance to the Sapa Inca and contributed labor and tribute. This approach created a balance between authority and autonomy, ensuring that the new territories were integrated rather than perpetually rebellious. Military organization under Pachacuti was exceptional. He developed specialized units trained for the difficult terrain of the Andes. Infantry, accustomed to high altitudes, could traverse mountain passes and ambush enemies from above. Cavalry, though limited to llamas for transport rather than riding, was deployed to carry supplies and messages quickly across valleys. Engineers accompanied the armies to construct roads, bridges, and fortifications, ensuring that the forces could move efficiently and hold newly conquered territories. Strategy, logistics, and adaptability became the hallmarks of the Inca military under Pachacuti. One of his most famous campaigns was against the Incas, the very people who had once threatened Cusco itself. After securing the city, Pachacuti did not rest. He launched a calculated assault that neutralized the Inca threat permanently. According to legend, the Incas were so confident in their numbers that they believed Cusco would fall easily. Pachacuti's use of terrain, surprise attacks, and psychological tactics turned the tide. Victory against such a formidable enemy solidified his reputation and sent a powerful message to neighboring groups. The Incas were not to be underestimated. Beyond immediate neighbors, Pachacuti extended his reach to the southern valleys of what is now modern-day Peru. Tribes such as the Kala, Lupaca, and Chanca were brought under Inca influence through campaigns combining war, negotiation, and the strategic relocation of populations. This policy, later formalized as Midma, involved moving loyal subjects into newly conquered regions and relocating potentially rebellious groups to prevent uprisings. By controlling both people and land, Pachacuti ensured stability across a rapidly expanding territory. Trade and resources were also central to these conquests. The Andes offered a variety of climates and products, and control over different ecological zones meant access to diverse crops, animals, and minerals. Coastal valleys provided maize and fish, highlands yielded potatoes and quinoa, and mountain pastures sustained llamas and alpacas. Pachacuti understood that an empire without a secure supply of food and materials would be unstable, so he prioritized areas that could sustain both the army and the growing population of Cusco. In addition to territorial control, Pachacuti emphasized cultural integration. He did not simply impose Inca ways on conquered peoples. Local traditions, religious practices, and social structures were often preserved, but incorporated into the imperial framework. Local gods were recognized and linked to the sun god Inti, allowing conquered peoples to feel a continuity of their beliefs while acknowledging the supremacy of the Inca. This flexible approach reduced resistance and strengthened loyalty. Roads and communication were equally critical. Pachacuti ordered the construction of the first segments of the Kapaknan, the royal road system that would eventually connect the entire empire. Couriers known as chasquis ran along these roads, relaying messages, carrying goods, and ensuring that Cusco remained in contact with distant regions. Fortifications were built along strategic points, allowing for rapid deployment of troops if a rebellion arose. In this way, conquest was not only a matter of battlefield victories, but also of administration, logistics, and foresight. Religious and symbolic acts accompanied military campaigns. Pachacuti often brought priests and sacred objects with him, performing rituals to sanctify battles and to assert divine approval. Victories were celebrated with ceremonies, sacrifices, and the construction of shrines. These acts reinforced the belief that the Incas were chosen by the sun god and that their expansion was divinely sanctioned. The spiritual dimension of conquest strengthened the social and political control over new territories. The expansion under Pachacuti was rapid but calculated. He did not conquer indiscriminately. Each campaign was planned to secure strategic routes, fertile lands, and loyal populations. By the time of his death, Cusco had grown from a city-state into the capital of an emerging empire, its influence reaching far beyond the valley. The foundation had been laid for successors to continue the expansion into the highlands, coastal deserts, and jungles. Pachacuti's conquests were not only military achievements, but also acts of statecraft. He created administrative systems to govern diverse regions, integrated conquered peoples into the economy, and ensured that the empire's cultural and religious cohesion remained intact. The Inca Empire was, in essence, born from the combination of vision, strategy, and adaptability under his leadership. By the end of his reign, the Inca Empire was no longer a small highland polity. It was a sophisticated state with centralized authority, extensive infrastructure, and an emerging identity that bound together many cultures and languages. Pachacuti's methods of conquest and integration would be emulated and expanded by his successors, allowing the empire to reach its greatest extent under Huayna Capac and Tupac Inca Yupanqui. The story of Pachacuti's expansion reminds us that empire is not merely about military power. It is about vision, planning, and the ability to weave diverse peoples and landscapes into a cohesive whole. Through his campaigns, Pachacuti transformed the Incas from a small, threatened people into the masters of the Andes, establishing foundations that would endure long after his death. Part 6. Roads through the sky. One of the most remarkable achievements of the Inca Empire, second only to its cities and military conquests, was its system of roads, which stretched across the formidable Andes and connected an empire of millions. The Incas did not have the wheel or large draft animals. They had neither horses nor carts during the height of their civilization. Yet they created a transportation network that rivaled the most advanced systems of the ancient world. These roads, often called the Kapaknan, or Royal Road, were vital to the expansion, administration, and survival of the empire, earning them the title, Roads Through the Sky. The construction of these roads was an enormous feat of engineering. The Andes are among the most challenging landscapes on Earth. They are filled with towering peaks, deep gorges, fast-flowing rivers, and unstable slopes. Despite these obstacles, the Incas carved paths into cliffs, laid stone pavements across marshes, and built terraces along steep mountainsides to prevent erosion. In places where rivers or ravines made travel impossible, they built suspension bridges from woven grass ropes, anchored to massive stone structures. These bridges were maintained constantly, renewed every few years, and allowed people and goods to move swiftly across otherwise impassable terrain. The Royal Road system was not a single path, but a network branching across the empire. Main highways ran north and south along the spine of the Andes, connecting Cusco with distant regions, while smaller routes extended into valleys, connecting remote settlements and agricultural areas. The roads varied in width, from broad causeways large enough for groups of runners and pack llamas, to narrow mountain paths carved into cliffs. Some were paved with stone, others maintained as compacted dirt, but all were carefully planned and maintained to ensure year-round usability. These roads were critical for communication. Couriers known as chasquis ran along the highways in relay systems, covering distances that would challenge modern travelers. Each chasqa carried messages or goods to the next station, and fresh runners ensured that information could travel hundreds of kilometers in a single day. Using this system, the Sapa Inca could send commands, receive reports, and mobilize troops with unprecedented speed. News of rebellions, military threats, or resource needs traveled faster than any enemy could anticipate, giving the empire a strategic advantage unmatched by contemporary civilizations. The roads also facilitated trade and resource distribution. Agricultural products, textiles, and precious metals moved efficiently between regions. Food stored in calcas, or state storehouses, could be transported to areas experiencing famine. Llamas carried bundles of goods along the roads, and relay stations provided shelter and supplies for travelers. By creating this network, the Incas ensured that Cusco remained the administrative and spiritual heart of the empire, while distant provinces could remain productive and loyal. Engineering ingenuity was evident not only in the construction of roads, but in the bridges, stairways, and tunnels that accompanied them. Suspension bridges spanned deep gorges, sometimes over 100 meters across. They were made from braided grass ropes and regularly maintained by local communities as part of their tribute. Stone stairways were cut into steep slopes to allow the movement of goods and soldiers. In some locations, tunnels were bored through mountains to shorten travel distances. The combination of roads, bridges, and tunnels demonstrates the Incas' extraordinary ability to overcome natural obstacles without metal tools or draft animals. The compact net also had a symbolic function. It represented the power and reach of the Sapa Inca, linking every province to the capital and reinforcing the idea that all paths led to Cusco. Along the highways, markers and stone monuments signaled the boundaries of territories, indicated distances, and marked sacred sites. Travelers were reminded constantly that the empire was ordered vast, and under the watchful eye of the sun god and the Sapa Inca. Roads were supported by a network of infrastructure. Inns, or tambos, were placed at regular intervals along the main highways, providing shelter, food, and fresh llamas for travelers and messengers. Military outposts guarded strategic points, ensuring security along the roads. Labor for construction and maintenance was organized through the Mita system, compelling communities to contribute work as a form of tribute. This integration of social, economic, and religious obligations ensured the sustainability of the network. Strategically, the roads allowed rapid deployment of armies. Troops could move from the capital to distant borders in weeks rather than months. Communication and coordination were enhanced, giving the Incas the ability to suppress rebellions quickly and respond to external threats. The efficiency of the network was unmatched in the Americas, and it allowed the empire to maintain cohesion across mountains, deserts, and jungles. The impact of the compact net extended beyond the practical. It reinforced the identity of the empire. Every road, bridge, and tunnel was a testament to human ingenuity, discipline, and the divine mission of the Incas. By connecting distant peoples, the roads allowed cultural and religious practices to spread, reinforcing loyalty to the sun god and the authority of the Sapa Inca. The physical network mirrored the spiritual and political network that held the empire together. Today, remnants of the compact net still exist, stretching across modern Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Chile, and Argentina. Sections of paved road, stone stairways, and rope bridges remain, testifying to the ingenuity of a civilization that conquered nature itself to connect its people. Scholars recognize the Inca road system as one of the most advanced infrastructure networks of the ancient world. It was more than a means of travel. It was the lifeblood of the empire, enabling communication, trade, and control over vast distances. The roads of the Inca Empire exemplify the combination of vision, engineering, and administration that made the civilization remarkable. They demonstrate that infrastructure is not merely functional but political and cultural, capable of uniting disparate peoples under a common system of governance. For the Incas, every kilometer of road was a triumph over geography and a symbol of imperial authority. Through the compact net, the Incas connected mountains, rivers, valleys, and peoples. They created a living network that enabled communication, ensured economic stability, facilitated military control, and reinforced religious and political authority. These roads were truly roads through the sky, carrying the empire across impossible terrain and shaping the destiny of the Andes for centuries. Part 7. Life in the Empire. Life in the Inca Empire was defined by the extraordinary adaptation of people to a harsh environment, a highly organized social structure, and a deep connection to religion and tradition. The empire stretched across thousands of kilometers, encompassing high mountains, coastal deserts, and tropical forests. Within this vast territory, daily life was shaped by the needs of survival, the obligations of community, and the guidance of the sun god, Inti. To understand the Incas, it is essential to examine how ordinary people lived, worked, and celebrated within this sophisticated society. The foundation of daily life was agriculture. The Incas mastered farming in challenging landscapes, using terraces carved into steep mountain slopes, sophisticated irrigation channels, and crop rotation to maintain soil fertility. Families cultivated potatoes, maize, quinoa, beans, and other staples adapted to different ecological zones. Llamas and alpacas were essential not only for transport, but also for wool and meat. Herding was carefully managed, with designated grazing lands and rotations to prevent overuse of pastures. Surplus crops were stored in calcas, granaries placed throughout the empire, ensuring that the community could survive years of drought or poor harvests. Social organization was structured around the Alu, an extended kin group that shared land, labor, and resources. Each member of an Alu had responsibilities and obligations. Labor was considered a sacred duty, not merely economic necessity. Men typically worked the fields, herded animals, built terraces, and served the state through the Mita system, a form of labor tribute. Women tended households, prepared food, wove textiles, and participated in religious ceremonies. Both men and women contributed to festivals and rituals, reinforcing the cohesion of the community. Education and upbringing were highly structured. Children learned practical skills from an early age. Boys were trained in farming, herding, and construction, while girls learned weaving, cooking, and household management. In addition, children were taught the myths and history of the Incas, ensuring that knowledge of divine ancestry, laws, and cultural practices passed from one generation to the next. Some children, especially those from noble families, received more specialized education, preparing them for administrative or religious roles. The empire had a clear hierarchy, with the Sapa Inca at the top, regarded as the living son of the sun. Below him were nobles, priests, and administrators who managed regions and communities. Commoners, artisans, and laborers formed the backbone of society. Despite this hierarchy, social mobility existed, especially through service to the state. Successful administrators, skilled artisans, or accomplished warriors could rise in status, provided they demonstrated loyalty and competence. Religion permeated every aspect of life. The sun god, Inti, was supreme, but many other deities and spirits were recognized. Mountains, rivers, and lakes were considered sacred. People offered sacrifices, both of food and, in rare cases, of animals or humans, to ensure the favor of the gods. Festivals marked agricultural cycles, solstices, and royal events. Music, dance, and elaborate ceremonies reinforced religious devotion while strengthening communal bonds. Housing varied according to status and location. Nobles and priests lived in stone houses with multiple rooms, often near the temples or plazas of the city. Commoners lived in simpler structures, usually circular or rectangular, made of adobe with thatched roofs. Despite simplicity, homes were designed to be functional and durable, protecting inhabitants from harsh weather, heavy rains, and cold mountain nights. food was central to life and culture. The Inca diet relied on staple crops, with potatoes and maize forming the core of daily meals. Quinoa, beans, squash, and fruit supplemented the diet. Llamas and alpacas provided meat, and fish from rivers and coastal areas supplemented protein intake. Food was often prepared communally, especially during festivals, and stored in granaries to ensure stability across the empire. The preparation of chicha, a fermented maize drink, was both a daily custom and a ceremonial practice, used in rituals and feasts to honor the gods and the community. Clothing reflected social status and occupation. Wool from llamas and alpacas was spun and woven into garments. Nobles wore elaborate textiles with intricate patterns, dyed in bright colors, and adorned with jewelry made from gold, silver, or shells. Commoners wore simpler clothing, functional, and suited to labor and climate. Weaving was considered both a practical skill and a form of art, with designs often carrying symbolic meaning or representing local identity. Community activities, festivals, and work projects reinforce social cohesion. Large-scale projects, such as terrace construction, road building, or temple expansion, were performed collectively, combining labor with ritual and reinforcing the connection between human effort and divine favor. Festivals marked important agricultural events, solstices, and royal ceremonies, blending music, dance, and ritual in public displays of devotion and unity. The Incas also valued knowledge and record-keeping. Without a written language, they relied on quipus, intricate systems of knotted cords, to record census data, tribute, labor obligations, and historical events. Quipus allowed administrators to manage resources across vast distances, maintaining order in an empire where communication and control were essential. Despite the challenges of geography and climate, life in the empire was highly organized. People were deeply connected to the land, to each other, and to the spiritual world. Duties, rituals, and obligations ensured that survival, productivity, and cultural continuity were maintained. While the elite enjoyed privileges, the majority of the population contributed to a system that emphasized cooperation, reciprocity, and social harmony. Every aspect of daily life reflected the integration of religion, politics, and practical necessity. Farming was not only economic but sacred. Labor was not only functional but part of a moral and spiritual order. Roads, terraces, and temples were both utilitarian and symbolic. Life in the Inca Empire was a delicate balance of survival, devotion, and service to the state, where every individual, from child to elder, played a role in sustaining the civilization. The cohesion of the empire depended on this integration. People knew their place, understood their duties, and participated in a system that connected local communities to the capital. In return, they received protection, resources, and the stability that allowed society to flourish. Life in the empire, while demanding, was predictable, ordered, and guided by a worldview that united human activity with divine purpose. Through agriculture, labor, religion, education, and community, the Incas created a society that could support one of the largest and most sophisticated empires in pre-Columbian America. Daily life was not separate from empire. It was the foundation upon which the power, reach, and endurance of the Inca civilization rested. Part 8. Religion and the Sun God. Religion was the heartbeat of the Inca Empire, influencing every aspect of daily life, governance, and expansion. At the center of this spiritual world was Inti, the sun god, regarded as the supreme deity and the divine ancestor of the ruling dynasty. To the Incas, the sun was not merely a celestial body, but the source of life, energy, and order. Worship of Inti was inseparable from the authority of the Sapa Inca, who was considered the living son of the sun and the earthly representative of divine will. The most important temple in the empire was the Coricancha, or Golden Enclosure, located in the heart of Cusco. Its walls were adorned with sheets of gold that reflected the sunlight, dazzling all who entered. The temple served as both a religious center and a symbol of imperial authority. Priests conducted daily ceremonies, offering food, textiles, and other gifts to honor Inti. During festivals, the temple became the focus of elaborate rituals, music, and dance, drawing crowds from across the empire. Religious practice extended far beyond the capital. Sacred sites, or huacas, existed throughout the Andes, ranging from mountains and lakes to stones and springs. Each huaca was believed to house a spirit, or huaque, capable of influencing human affairs. Pilgrimages to these sites were common, and local rituals ensured harmony between people and the spiritual world. Mountains, in particular, were revered as apis, powerful guardians of valleys and communities. Snow-capped peaks were seen as sacred reservoirs of life-giving water, and offerings were made to ensure rainfall, fertility, and protection. Sacrifice was an integral part of Inca religious practice. Offerings ranged from food and textiles to animals, and in rare and highly significant cases, humans. Human sacrifices, often children or young women, were carried out in response to extraordinary events, such as natural disasters, war, or the death of a ruler. The chosen individuals were considered sacred and were treated with honor, not cruelty. These ceremonies, performed at high-altitude mountaintops or in temples, reinforced the connection between the people, the gods, and the Sapa Inca. The Incas believed that their rulers derived authority directly from divine sources. The Sapa Inca was both political leader and high priest, a combination that ensured absolute control over the population. By intertwining religion and governance, the Incas created a system where obedience was not merely civic duty, but spiritual obligation. Loyalty to the emperor was framed as devotion to the sun god, and rebellion was tantamount to sacrilege. This fusion of faith and authority strengthened the empire and maintained order across its vast territories. Rituals and festivals marked the agricultural calendar and significant events in the empire. The Inti Raymi, or Festival of the Sun, was one of the most important celebrations, occurring during the winter solstice. It involved processions, sacrifices, feasting, and performances, all designed to honor Inti and ensure a successful harvest. During these events, the community reaffirmed its connection to the gods and to each other, reinforcing social cohesion and the authority of the Sapa Inca. Priests, or vilacumu, held a special place in society. They were responsible for interpreting the will of the gods, performing rituals, and maintaining sacred sites. Training for priests was rigorous, often beginning in childhood, and included instruction in astronomy, calendrics, and ceremonial procedures. Priests were advisors to the emperor, ensuring that political decisions were aligned with spiritual guidance. This integration of religion into governance exemplified the holistic worldview of the Incas, where spiritual, social, and political realms were inseparable. The worship of Inti was complemented by recognition of other deities and forces. Mama Quilla, the moon goddess, governed the lunar calendar and female fertility. Pachamama, the earth mother, was honored in agricultural rituals, ensuring soil fertility and bountiful harvests. Deities associated with water, wind, and death were also respected, reflecting the Incas' awareness of the natural world and its influence on human life. By incorporating multiple deities, the Incas created a flexible religious system capable of uniting diverse peoples under a shared spiritual framework. Religious architecture reinforced belief and authority. Temples, shrines, and ceremonial plazas were carefully aligned with astronomical events, such as solstices and equinoxes. Observatories allowed priests to track the sun, moon, and stars, ensuring precise timing for agricultural activities and festivals. The alignment of sacred structures with celestial phenomena symbolized the harmony between the cosmos, the emperor, and the people. Religion also guided moral and ethical behavior. The Incas believed that actions affecting the community, the land, or the gods would have consequences. Reciprocity, respect, and collective responsibility were core values, reinforced through ritual, law, and education. Festivals, communal work, and offerings were ways to maintain balance and favor from the divine. This moral framework helped sustain cohesion across a vast and diverse empire. Even in daily life, religion played a role. Meals began with prayers to Inti, houses contained small shrines to local spirits, and every significant event, birth, marriage, death, was marked with ritual observances. Through these practices, spirituality was woven into the very fabric of existence, connecting individuals to the broader society and to the cosmos. The Inca religious system was both a source of personal guidance and a tool of statecraft. By centering authority in the Sapa Inca and connecting every act of governance to divine will, the Incas created a society in which loyalty, obedience, and cooperation were spiritual imperatives. Sacred landscapes, monumental temples, festivals, and priestly guidance all worked together to maintain stability, reinforce hierarchy, and unify diverse peoples under a single worldview. In summary, religion in the Inca Empire was not an isolated aspect of life, but the framework that shaped politics, society, economy, and culture. Worship of Inti, respect for Apis and Huacas, ritual sacrifice, festivals, and moral codes intertwined to create a cohesive civilization. The sun god illuminated not only the land but the very structure of power, guiding the emperor, inspiring the people, and sustaining one of the most remarkable empires in human history. Part 9. Architecture and Engineering. The Inca Empire is celebrated not only for its political and military achievements, but also for its extraordinary feats of architecture and engineering. Despite the absence of iron tools or the wheel, the Incas created cities, fortresses, terraces, and road systems that remain astonishing even by modern standards. Their constructions demonstrate ingenuity, practicality, and an understanding of both human needs and the natural environment. In architecture and engineering, the Incas combined utility with symbolism, ensuring that their buildings reflected both function and cosmic order. One of the most striking examples of Inca architecture is the city of Machu Picchu, perched high on a mountain ridge. The city's construction demonstrates the Incas' mastery of stonework, drainage, and urban planning. Buildings were crafted from precisely cut stones that fit together without mortar, a technique called ashlar masonry. This method allowed structures to withstand frequent earthquakes, as the stones could move slightly and then resettle without collapsing. Streets, plazas, temples, and terraces were carefully arranged to harmonize with the natural topography, creating a city that blended seamlessly with the surrounding mountains. Engineering prowess extended to agricultural terraces, which transformed steep mountain slopes into productive farmland. Terraces prevented soil erosion, retained water, and created microclimates suitable for different crops. Through careful irrigation and drainage, these terraces enabled the cultivation of maize, potatoes, quinoa, and other staples at altitudes that would otherwise have been unsuitable for farming. The terraces were not only functional but also a visual testament to Inca ingenuity, stretching in geometric patterns across mountainsides. Fortifications were another hallmark of Inca engineering. Cities such as Sacsayhuaman above Cusco showcase massive stone walls composed of colossal boulders, some weighing more than 100 tons. These walls were interlocked with incredible precision, resisting earthquakes and enemy attacks. The fortress's strategic location allowed defenders to control the city below, while its zigzagging walls made assault extremely difficult. Fortresses combined defensive necessity with religious and symbolic significance, reflecting the connection between military power, governance, and divine protection. Urban planning in Inca cities followed a clear logic. Streets were laid out according to astronomical and symbolic principles, often aligned with sacred mountains or solstice positions. Residential areas were organized according to social hierarchy, with nobles and priests living closer to temples and plazas, while commoners inhabited peripheral districts. Public buildings, such as storage facilities or ceremonial centers, were centrally located, reinforcing both administrative efficiency and communal cohesion. The integration of practical needs with cosmological symbolism exemplified the Inca approach to urban design. Water management was a key aspect of engineering. The Incas built canals, fountains, and aqueducts to supply cities, temples, and agricultural terraces. In Machu Picchu, for example, a complex system of stone channels directed mountain streams through the city, ensuring clean water for drinking, irrigation, and ritual use. Drainage systems prevented flooding and erosion, demonstrating careful planning and environmental adaptation. The ability to manage water effectively was essential in an empire that encompassed high-altitude plains, arid deserts, and tropical forests. Inca engineers also excelled at road construction, a topic discussed in previous chapters. The roads were complemented by stairways carved into cliffs, suspension bridges across deep gorges, and tunnels through mountains. Every engineering solution was adapted to the local environment, reflecting a deep understanding of terrain, climate, and the movement of people and goods. These achievements were not isolated. They formed an integrated network that connected cities, fortresses, farms, and ceremonial centers across the empire. Stonework in Inca architecture was particularly remarkable. Stones were quarried using simple tools and transported across difficult terrain, sometimes over distances of several kilometers. They were then shaped to fit precisely with neighboring stones, creating walls and buildings capable of withstanding natural disasters. The precision was such that even the thinnest knife blade could not pass between many stones. This attention to detail ensured durability, and also reflected the Inca belief in harmony and order, embedding cosmology into construction. Terraces, fortresses, and roads were maintained collectively through the Mita labor system. Communities contributed work as a form of tribute, ensuring that infrastructure remained functional and sustainable. This collective effort reinforced social cohesion and tied the well-being of the population to the maintenance of imperial achievements. By linking labor, duty, and the built environment, the Incas created structures that were both durable and socially meaningful. Inca architecture was not only about utility, but also aesthetics and symbolism. Temples, plazas, and fortresses were oriented according to sacred geography, aligning with mountains, rivers, and the cardinal directions. Stone carvings, reliefs, and urban layouts communicated political authority, religious devotion, and cosmological knowledge. Every structure was both practical and a statement of power, serving multiple purposes simultaneously. The achievements of Inca engineering and architecture extended across the empire. From Machu Picchu to Ollantaytambo, from Pisac to Sacsayhuaman, structures combined precision, functionality, and symbolic meaning. Roads, terraces, aqueducts, and fortresses created a cohesive system that allowed the empire to thrive in one of the most challenging landscapes on Earth. These accomplishments were not only practical solutions to environmental challenges, but also expressions of cultural identity and imperial ideology. In conclusion, Inca architecture and engineering represent a fusion of utility, artistry, and spiritual meaning. Terraces fed millions, roads connected the empire, fortresses defended it, and temples embodied its religious and political order. Every stone, canal, and roadway reflected a civilization capable of transforming rugged mountains into thriving centers of life, administration, and worship. The built environment of the Incas stands as a testament to their ingenuity, organization, and vision, enduring as a legacy of one of the greatest civilizations in pre-Columbian America. Part 10. Agriculture and Food Systems. Agriculture was the backbone of the Inca Empire, sustaining millions of people across the high mountains, valleys, and coastal plains of the Andes. The Incas transformed challenging landscapes into productive farmland, using sophisticated techniques that ensured food security and supported the growth of one of the largest civilizations in pre-Columbian America. Their agricultural knowledge, combined with communal labor and state organization, allowed them to cultivate a diverse array of crops in extreme environments. The foundation of Inca agriculture was the creation of terraces, or andans, on steep mountain slopes. Terracing prevented soil erosion, conserved water, and created microclimates suitable for different crops. Lower terraces were warmer and ideal for maize and squash, while higher terraces were cooler and suitable for potatoes, quinoa, and other tubers. This vertical farming system allowed the Incas to maximize land use and maintain a diverse and stable food supply, even in regions where flat land was scarce. Irrigation was another key aspect of Inca agriculture. Canals, aqueducts, and channels were built to divert mountain streams to fields, ensuring a consistent water supply even in dry seasons. Stone-lined channels prevented water loss and erosion, while reservoirs and cisterns stored water for later use. These systems were carefully maintained and regularly repaired by local communities, integrating labor with the state through the Mita system. Water management allowed the Incas to cultivate areas that would otherwise have been unproductive, and to expand agriculture into new regions. Crop diversity was central to Inca food security. Potatoes were the primary staple, with hundreds of varieties cultivated across different altitudes. Maize, grown in lower valleys, was essential for ceremonial use and as a staple food. Quinoa, beans, squash, peppers, and amaranth complemented the diet, providing essential nutrients. The Incas also cultivated coca for medicinal and ritual purposes. This diversity minimized the risk of famine, as different crops thrived under varying climatic conditions. Llamas and alpacas played a crucial role in the agricultural system. They provided wool for textiles, meat for food, and transport for goods. Herding was carefully managed, with rotational grazing and designated pastures to prevent overuse. Llamas carried harvested crops, supplies, and tools along the empire's extensive road system, connecting remote farms with storage centers and urban markets. The integration of animal husbandry with agriculture created a resilient and interconnected system. Food storage was another remarkable aspect of Inca agriculture. Granaries, or calcas, were built throughout the empire, strategically located near roads, cities, and highland farms. These structures stored maize, potatoes, dried meats, and other essentials, often for years. Proper ventilation, stone flooring, and careful organization ensured that stored food remained safe from pests and spoilage. Granaries allowed the empire to endure periods of drought, poor harvests, or natural disasters, stabilizing both population and economy. The state played a central role in agriculture. The Sapa Inca collected surplus produce as tribute, which was then redistributed to support the army, religious ceremonies, or regions facing shortages. Agricultural production was also tied to labor obligations. Communities contributed work on terraces, irrigation, or storage facilities, reinforcing social cohesion and imperial control. This integration of production, labor, and redistribution created a sustainable and efficient system capable of supporting a vast empire. Farming practices were deeply intertwined with religion and cosmology. Planting, harvesting, and irrigation were accompanied by rituals to honor Pachamama, the Earth Mother, and Inti, the Sun God. Festivals marked key agricultural milestones, such as sowing or harvest, combining practical work with spiritual observance. These ceremonies reinforced community bonds, ensured adherence to farming schedules, and connected daily labor with divine favor. Agriculture also shaped the settlement patterns of the empire. Fertile valleys and terraced hillsides supported dense populations, while roads and storage facilities connected dispersed communities. Cities, towns, and villages were strategically located near productive land, water sources, and roads, reflecting the integration of food production with administration, trade, and defense. Every aspect of settlement planning was influenced by the need to feed and sustain the population efficiently. The Inca agricultural system demonstrated remarkable adaptability. Crops were chosen and cultivated according to altitude, climate, and soil conditions. Terraces and canals mitigated environmental challenges such as erosion, frost, and drought. Crop rotation and storage minimized the risk of famine. Herding and irrigation were carefully coordinated, linking people, animals, and land into an interconnected system. Through this combination of ingenuity, labor, and organization, the Incas created a resilient and productive agricultural network that supported the empire's expansion and stability. In summary, agriculture in the Inca Empire was more than subsistence farming. It was a complex, sophisticated system integrating engineering, social organization, religious observance, and state administration. Terraces, irrigation channels, granaries, and livestock management ensured food security across diverse and challenging environments. The Inca agricultural system enabled population growth, urban development, military campaigns, and cultural cohesion, forming the foundation upon which the empire thrived. Part 11. Trade, Economy, and the Mita System. The Inca Empire's economic system was unlike any in the pre-Columbian Americas. Without money, markets, or coinage, the Incas developed a highly organized system of labor, trade, and resource distribution that allowed them to govern and sustain millions of people across vast and diverse landscapes. At the heart of this system was the Mita, a labor tax that ensured the construction of roads, terraces, storage facilities, and cities while simultaneously providing goods and services for the state and the people. The Mita system required communities to contribute a portion of their population to public work projects. Men, women, and sometimes children performed specific tasks depending on age, skill, and social role. Men typically worked in agriculture, road construction, fortresses, or military service. Women contributed through textile production, food preparation, and participation in ceremonial labor. The labor obligation was cyclical, rotating among communities to distribute the burden fairly. In return, the state provided protection, access to resources, and a social safety net during times of need. Trade within the empire was sophisticated despite the absence of money. Goods moved along the Kapaknan, the extensive road network that connected highlands, valleys, deserts, and jungle regions. Llamas carried textiles, maize, potatoes, quinoa, coca, and precious metals along these routes. Each province specialized in certain products according to climate and terrain. Coastal regions provided fish and shells, highlands produced potatoes, maize, and livestock, while forested areas supplied fruits, medicinal plants, and exotic materials. This internal trade network ensured that even remote regions had access to essential goods. Redistribution was central to the economy. Surplus produce and manufactured goods collected from communities were stored in kalkas, granaries, and warehouses strategically located along roads and near urban centers. The state could then redistribute these goods to areas experiencing shortages, supply armies, or support large-scale festivals and construction projects. Redistribution maintained social stability, ensured food security, and reinforced the authority of the Sapa Inca. Craft production was another important economic component. Skilled artisans produced textiles, pottery, metalwork, and tools. Textiles, made from llama and alpaca wool, were highly valued and often used as tribute, ceremonial offerings, or diplomatic gifts. Gold and silver were crafted into religious objects, jewelry, and decorations for temples and palaces, symbolizing both wealth and divine favor. The state oversaw production and distribution, ensuring that craftsmanship served both practical and ceremonial purposes. Markets existed in a limited form, but were regulated and often ceremonial. Exchange of goods occurred during festivals or at designated communal centers, allowing communities to obtain items they could not produce locally. However, most economic activity was organized by the state, with labor, production, and redistribution forming the backbone of the empire's economy. Money as a medium of exchange was unnecessary because the system relied on trust, duty, and reciprocity. The Mita system also had a military function. Communities supplied labor not only for construction, but for warfare. Soldiers were recruited from local populations and moved efficiently along roads to respond to rebellions or threats. The labor tax ensured that the empire had both the infrastructure and manpower necessary for expansion and defense. Participation in the Mita was a civic duty, linking local communities to the state and reinforcing loyalty to the Sapa Inca. Religion and economy were intertwined. Offerings of food, textiles, and goods were given to the gods, temples, and the Sapa Inca. Labor performed for the state was considered both practical and sacred. By linking spiritual obligation with economic activity, the Incas created a cohesive system where devotion, duty, and survival were interconnected. Festivals, agricultural work, and construction projects were simultaneously economic, religious, and social acts. The efficiency of the Inca economy depended on precise administration. Census counts were conducted to know the number of people, available labor, and resources. Quipus, the system of knotted cords, recorded information about population, production, and tribute, enabling administrators to allocate resources effectively. Roads and storage facilities supported this system, ensuring that goods moved efficiently and that labor obligations were fulfilled. Regional specialization increased economic productivity. Coastal areas supplied fish and salt. Highlands produced crops and livestock, and the Amazonian fringes provided exotic plants and materials. The redistribution system allowed these products to reach distant provinces, creating an interconnected economy where every region contributed according to its strengths. In summary, the Inca economic system was a complex web of labor, trade, redistribution, and administration. The Mita system provided the workforce necessary for agriculture, infrastructure, and military campaigns. Roads and storage facilities facilitated the movement of goods and ensured food security. Skilled artisans produced essential and ceremonial items. All economic activity was integrated with religious and political structures, creating a resilient system capable of sustaining an empire of millions. Through labor, trade, and careful management, the Incas achieved a level of economic organization unmatched in the Americas at the time. Their system ensured stability, cohesion, and the ability to respond to environmental and social challenges. It was a civilization built not on currency or markets, but on duty, reciprocity, and collective effort, demonstrating that an empire's wealth can lie in the effective coordination of its people and resources. Part 12. Military Organization and Strategy. The Inca Empire achieved its vast territorial expansion not only through diplomacy, but through a highly disciplined and organized military system. The Incas were aware that maintaining control over diverse and often distant populations required an army capable of rapid mobilization, strategic flexibility, and logistical efficiency. From the Sapa Inca to local commanders, military organization was integrated with governance, infrastructure, and social structures, creating a force that could enforce authority across thousands of kilometers of mountains, valleys, and jungles. The backbone of the Inca army was the citizen soldier drawn from the Mita system. Able-bodied men were trained from youth to perform military duties alongside their agricultural and labor obligations. Military service was considered both a civic and spiritual duty, ensuring loyalty to the Sapa Inca and the sun god, Inti. Soldiers were trained in discipline, formation, and the use of weapons such as slings, clubs, spears, and bows. Training also included understanding terrain, strategic positioning, and the psychology of warfare, enabling commanders to exploit both geography and enemy weaknesses. Organization of the army was hierarchical and highly structured. Units were divided into groups based on size, often following decimal principles, with leaders responsible for maintaining discipline and coordinating movements. Local commanders reported to regional leaders, who in turn were accountable to the Sapa Inca or his appointed generals. This chain of command allowed for efficient mobilization, rapid response to threats, and coordinated attacks across multiple fronts. Inca military strategy was adaptive and precise. The empire's diverse geography demanded flexibility. In mountainous regions, soldiers were trained for high-altitude combat, using narrow paths and elevated positions to ambush enemies. In coastal areas and valleys, larger formations could maneuver more freely, while in jungle regions, reconnaissance and small unit tactics were employed to navigate dense vegetation and unfamiliar terrain. The Incas combined knowledge of the environment with disciplined coordination, making their forces highly effective across different landscapes. Fortresses and defensive structures complemented the army's mobility. Cities like Sacsayhuaman near Cusco served both as strongholds and bases for military operations. Strategic positioning allowed the Incas to control access points, monitor enemy movements, and deploy troops quickly to threatened regions. Fortresses were often integrated with the terrain, using cliffs, rivers, and terraces to create natural defensive advantages. These strongholds also symbolized imperial authority, deterring potential rebellions and inspiring loyalty among local populations. Communication was a critical component of military effectiveness. The road network, Kapaknan, facilitated the rapid movement of troops, supplies, and information. Couriers known as chaskis relayed messages from the front lines to command centers and the capital, allowing commanders to respond swiftly to changing circumstances. Supply depots and storage facilities along these routes ensured that armies remained provisioned during long campaigns, enabling sustained operations far from Cusco. Psychological warfare was also employed by the Incas. Demonstrations of strength, displays of captured leaders, and symbolic acts of religious authority conveyed the inevitability of Inca power. Conquered peoples were often treated with a combination of integration and intimidation. Local leaders retained positions of influence if they pledged loyalty, while communities were relocated strategically to prevent uprisings. By blending military might with administrative acumen, the Incas could secure control without continuous occupation. Major campaigns, such as those against the Chancas, Kalas, and other highland tribes, showcased the effectiveness of Inca strategy. Surprise attacks, coordinated multi-pronged assaults, and careful exploitation of terrain enabled relatively small forces to defeat larger or better entrenched opponents. Logistics, planning, and adaptability were as crucial as brute force, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of warfare that emphasized preparation, intelligence, and resource management. Weapons and armor were designed for mobility and efficiency. Soldiers carried slings for long-range attacks, clubs and axes for close combat, and bows and arrows for ranged engagements. Armor was minimal but practical, using woven textiles, leather, or metal in key areas to provide protection without sacrificing speed. Llamas and pack animals transported supplies, reducing the burden on soldiers and allowing them to move quickly across difficult terrain. Military campaigns were not only about conquest, but also about integration. Following victories, conquered communities were incorporated into the empire through relocation, tribute, and labor obligations. Military and administrative functions overlapped. Soldiers often participated in construction projects, road building, and fortification maintenance. This integration ensured that military service strengthened the empire both immediately and in the long term. The success of the Inca military lay in its combination of organization, adaptability, and integration with civil structures. Armies were trained, disciplined, and supported by infrastructure, while strategy took full advantage of geography, logistics, and psychological factors. Military power reinforced social hierarchy, ensured the flow of resources, and enabled the empire to expand across the challenging landscapes of the Andes. In conclusion, the Inca military system exemplified a civilization that understood the interconnection between war, administration, and society. Soldiers were not isolated warriors, but active participants in the empire's economic, religious, and political life. Fortresses, roads, and supply networks amplified their effectiveness, while strategy, discipline, and adaptability allowed the Incas to conquer and integrate diverse peoples. The Inca army was a crucial instrument in creating and sustaining one of the most remarkable empires in pre-Columbian history. Part 13. Conquest and integration of new territories. The expansion of the Inca Empire was not achieved solely through military might. It was a careful combination of conquest, diplomacy, population management, and cultural integration. As the Incas extended their reach across the Andes, they encountered diverse peoples, languages, and customs. The success of the empire depended on incorporating these groups into a cohesive system, while maintaining political and social stability. Military conquest was often the first step. When neighboring tribes resisted, Inca forces deployed disciplined soldiers to demonstrate their strength. Strategic use of terrain, ambushes, and coordinated attacks allowed relatively small forces to subdue larger populations. However, the Incas understood that lasting control required more than victory on the battlefield. Once a territory was pacified, administrative and social measures were implemented to integrate the population into the empire. One of the most important strategies for integration was Midma, the resettlement of populations. Groups loyal to the empire were relocated to newly conquered areas to serve as intermediaries and examples of Inca culture. Conversely, potentially rebellious communities were moved away from their homelands to prevent uprisings and reduce regional loyalty. This strategic population transfer created a mosaic of ethnic and linguistic diversity, while ensuring that local power structures did not challenge imperial authority. Local leaders, known as Caracas, played a vital role in governance. The Incas often allowed these leaders to retain their positions, provided they pledged allegiance to the Sapa Inca and collected tribute from their people. By maintaining existing hierarchies under imperial oversight, the Incas reduced resistance and facilitated administrative control. Caracas were responsible for mobilizing labor, distributing resources, and ensuring compliance with laws, functioning as the bridge between the state and local communities. Economic integration was closely linked to conquest. New territories were required to contribute tribute in the form of crops, textiles, labor, or precious metals. This system ensured a steady flow of resources to the capital and supported both urban centers and military operations. Surplus production was stored in calcas, enabling redistribution during shortages or for state projects. Tribute obligations reinforced the authority of the state and demonstrated the tangible benefits and responsibilities of inclusion in the empire. Cultural integration was another crucial component. The Incas respected local traditions while incorporating them into a broader religious and social framework. Local deities were often linked to Inti, the sun god, allowing conquered peoples to maintain their spiritual practices while acknowledging Inca supremacy. Festivals, rituals, and ceremonies were adapted to include imperial elements, creating a shared cultural experience that reinforced loyalty and unity. Language played a key role in integration. The Incas promoted Quechua as the administrative and common language across the empire. While local languages persisted, the spread of Quechua facilitated communication, record-keeping, and governance. Officials, soldiers, and traders used the language to coordinate activities and maintain cohesion across diverse regions, further strengthening the sense of a unified empire. Infrastructure supported both military and administrative control. Roads, bridges, and storage facilities enabled rapid troop deployment, efficient resource distribution, and effective communication. The combination of physical networks and social systems allowed the Incas to govern territories that spanned thousands of kilometers of mountains, valleys, deserts, and forests. Integration was therefore both a logistical and cultural achievement, ensuring that distant provinces remained connected to Cusco. Education and indoctrination were subtle but powerful tools of integration. Children and young adults learned Inca history, religious beliefs, and administrative practices, preparing them to participate in the empire. Nobles and artisans were trained in crafts, governance, and ceremonial duties, ensuring continuity of skills and loyalty across generations. By embedding imperial knowledge and values in everyday life, the Incas created a shared identity that transcended local customs. Rebellion was addressed through a combination of force, diplomacy, and strategic concessions. Conquered peoples could gain privileges or honors for loyalty, while resistance was met with relocation, tribute adjustment, or military suppression. These measures reinforced the notion that inclusion in the empire offered both security and opportunity, while defiance carried tangible consequences. Religion remained central to integration. Temples, shrines, and ceremonies connected local communities to imperial ideology. Sacred sites were often co-opted to emphasize the authority of Inti and the Sapa Inca, while local beliefs were respected and incorporated. Festivals, offerings, and rituals became shared experiences that united disparate groups under the symbolic and spiritual authority of the empire. Through conquest, midma, tribute, cultural adaptation, and infrastructure, the Incas created an effective system of territorial integration. New lands were absorbed not only by force, but through careful planning, administrative oversight, and social engineering. This multifaceted approach ensured that the empire remained cohesive, resilient, and capable of sustaining both political and cultural unity across vast distances. In conclusion, the conquest and integration of new territories were defining features of Inca statecraft. Military power secured lands, but it was the combination of population management, local governance, economic contribution, cultural adaptation, and religious integration that transformed conquered regions into loyal parts of the empire. This approach allowed the Incas to maintain one of the largest and most sophisticated empires in pre-Columbian history, uniting diverse peoples under a single administrative and spiritual framework. Part 14. Communication and Information Systems. Effective communication was essential for the survival and expansion of the Inca Empire. Spanning thousands of kilometers of mountains, valleys, deserts, and jungles, the empire required a sophisticated system to transmit information rapidly and accurately. Despite lacking a written language in the conventional sense, the Incas developed innovative methods that enabled the Sapa Inca and his administrators to govern an empire of millions with remarkable efficiency. At the heart of Inca communication was the quipu, an intricate system of knotted cords used to record numerical data and convey information. Quipus consisted of colored strings, each with a series of knots tied at specific intervals. The colors, positions, and types of knots encoded information about population counts, tribute obligations, labor assignments, and resource inventories. Quipus allowed administrators to maintain accurate records across vast territories and coordinate logistics for agriculture, military campaigns, and construction projects. The creation and interpretation of quipus required skilled specialists known as quipucamaics. These individuals were trained to read and encode complex data, often learning for many years under the guidance of experienced masters. Quipucamaics were integral to the bureaucracy of the empire, ensuring that accurate information flowed between the capital, provincial administrators, and local communities. By using quipus, the Incas could manage economic production, labor, and tribute without relying on a written language. Rapid communication across the empire was facilitated by a network of chasquis, highly trained relay runners. Chasquis ran along the Kapaknan, the royal road system, covering long distances quickly. Stations along the route provided fresh runners, food, and shelter, enabling messages to travel hundreds of kilometers in a single day. Chasquis carried verbal messages, quipus, and goods, ensuring that commands from the Sapa Inca reached even the most remote corners of the empire. The roads themselves were critical to communication. Carefully constructed and maintained, they connected cities, fortresses, agricultural zones, and ceremonial centers. Bridges, tunnels, and stairways allowed for continuous movement despite challenging terrain. The combination of roads, relay runners, and quipus created a system in which information, resources, and people could move efficiently, sustaining the administrative and military needs of the empire. Symbolism also played a role in communication. Certain structures, plazas, and markers along roads conveyed messages about boundaries, sacred sites, or territorial control. Architectural alignments with mountains, rivers, and celestial events communicated political or religious authority to local populations. Public displays of wealth, ritual, and ceremony further reinforced the power of the Sapa Inca and the cohesion of the empire. Administrative communication was hierarchical. Local leaders, or caracas, reported information to regional officials, who passed it along to the central administration in Cusco. This flow of data included population statistics, production levels, labor assignments, and potential threats. Quipus ensured that numerical and logistical information could be transmitted reliably, while chasquis enabled rapid verbal communication for urgent matters. Together, these systems allowed the empire to respond quickly to crises, coordinate military campaigns, and organize large-scale projects. Religious communication was intertwined with governance. Festivals, ceremonies, and offerings conveyed information about loyalty, piety, and adherence to imperial authority. Messages sent through rituals or public displays served both spiritual and political purposes, reinforcing obedience and communal identity. The alignment of temples, plazas, and sacred roads further communicated order, hierarchy, and divine sanction. Education and communication skills was systematic. Young members of elite families were trained in quipu interpretation, relay running, and administrative procedures. This ensured a steady supply of competent administrators and messengers capable of maintaining the integrity of the empire's information network. Training also reinforced loyalty, discipline, and an understanding of the interconnectedness of military, economic, and religious life. The integration of quipus, chasquis, roads, and symbolic communication demonstrates the ingenuity of the Inca Empire. Despite lacking written language and advanced technology, the Incas managed to maintain centralized control, coordinate vast projects, and sustain economic and military systems. Communication was not merely functional. It was a tool of governance, social cohesion, and imperial ideology. In summary, the Inca communication system combined innovation, organization, and adaptability. Quipus provided detailed numerical records. Chasquis transmitted verbal messages across long distances, and the road network connected people, goods, and information. Symbolism reinforced authority and shared identity, while training ensured continuity and reliability. This sophisticated system allowed the Inca Empire to thrive across diverse and challenging landscapes, demonstrating that effective communication can underpin one of the most remarkable civilizations in history. Part 15. Art, Textiles, and Craftsmanship. Art and craftsmanship were central to Inca culture, reflecting both practical needs and spiritual beliefs. The Incas created objects of beauty, utility, and symbolism, integrating artistry into daily life, religion, and governance. Their works in textiles, metal, ceramics, and architecture demonstrate technical skill, creativity, and a deep understanding of materials. Through art, the Incas communicated social hierarchy, cultural identity, and devotion to the gods. Textiles were among the most highly valued forms of artistic expression. Woven from llama, alpaca, and vicuña wool, Fabrics ranged from simple, everyday clothing to elaborate garments for nobles and priests. Weavers employed complex patterns and vibrant colors, often using symbolic designs to convey social status, regional identity, or religious meaning. Certain patterns represented celestial phenomena, sacred animals, or cosmological concepts, turning every textile into a coded message of culture and belief. The creation of textiles involved multiple steps: spinning fibers, dyeing with natural pigments, and weaving on backstrap or upright looms. Dyeing techniques utilized plants, insects, and minerals to achieve a wide spectrum of colors, from deep reds and purples to bright yellows and greens. The meticulous attention to detail and skill required made textiles both functional and highly prized, often used as tribute, ceremonial offerings, or diplomatic gifts. Metalwork was another hallmark of Inca craftsmanship. Gold, silver, and copper were mined in the highlands and fashioned into ceremonial objects, jewelry, and decorative items. Gold was associated with the sun god, Inti, and was primarily used in temples, royal attire, and religious artifacts. Silver was linked to the moon goddess, Mama Quilla. Artisans hammered, cast, and engraved metals with precision, creating intricate designs that showcased both aesthetic and symbolic value. Techniques included alloying, gilding, and repoussé, demonstrating sophisticated metallurgical knowledge. Ceramics were widely used for both practical and ceremonial purposes. Pots, bowls, and vessels were crafted for cooking, storage, and ritual use. Decorative motifs often included geometric patterns, animals, and religious symbols, connecting everyday objects to the broader cultural and spiritual worldview. Ceramics were carefully fired to achieve durability, reflecting a mastery of material science and artistic sensibility. Stone carving and sculpture were essential in both architecture and ritual life. Temples, plazas, and fortresses featured carved stone elements, including reliefs of animals, deities, and sacred symbols. These carvings served decorative, religious, and political functions, reinforcing the authority of the Sapa Inca while honoring the gods. Even utilitarian structures incorporated aesthetic considerations, demonstrating the Inca belief in harmonizing form and function. Jewelry and adornment were indicators of social status and spiritual devotion. Nobles and priests wore ornaments made of gold, silver, shells, and semi-precious stones. Necklaces, earrings, and headdresses were not only decorative but also symbolic, often signifying rank, lineage, or religious role. Jewelry was carefully crafted and often used in ceremonies to reinforce hierarchy and connection to the divine. Inca art also reflected integration of conquered peoples' traditions. As the empire expanded, artisans incorporated motifs, techniques, and styles from various regions, blending local heritage with imperial aesthetics. This approach not only enriched artistic expression, but also fostered cultural cohesion, demonstrating respect for regional identity while promoting unity under the Sapa Inca. Craftsmanship extended beyond art into everyday life. Weaving, pottery, metalwork, and construction skills were taught from a young age, ensuring the transmission of knowledge across generations. Labor contributions through the Mita system often included artisanal work for temples, palaces, and public projects. These collective efforts allowed the empire to sustain both practical infrastructure and cultural expression simultaneously. Religious and ceremonial contexts amplified the importance of art. Offerings to Inti and other deities included textiles, metals, and crafted objects. Festivals and rituals featured music, costumes, and decorations, turning the display of artistry into a public demonstration of piety and social cohesion. Art became a bridge between daily life, spiritual practice, and imperial authority. In summary, Inca art and craftsmanship were integral to society, blending utility, aesthetics, symbolism, and spiritual significance. Textiles, metalwork, ceramics, and stone carvings reflected technical mastery and cultural values. Artistic expression reinforced social hierarchy, religious devotion, and cultural identity, while the integration of regional styles fostered unity across the empire. Through these creations, the Incas transformed raw materials into objects that were functional, beautiful, and deeply meaningful, leaving a lasting legacy of human ingenuity and creativity. Part 16. Religion and Festivals. Religion was the foundation of Inca society, shaping daily life, governance, agriculture, and art. The Incas believed in a universe where gods, humans, and nature were interconnected, and maintaining balance among these forces was essential for prosperity. Central to this belief system was the worship of Inti, the sun god, considered the divine ancestor of the Sapa Inca. Religious observances were not limited to temples. They permeated cities, villages, farms, and public spaces, influencing both individual behavior and state policies. Festivals were pivotal in expressing religious devotion and social cohesion. One of the most important celebrations was the Inti Raymi, or Festival of the Sun, held during the winter solstice. This festival honored Inti and marked the beginning of the agricultural season. Participants included nobles, priests, soldiers, artisans, and commoners, all contributing to processions, dances, music, and offerings. Rituals included the symbolic purification of fields, distribution of blessed food, and ceremonial sacrifices to ensure fertility and success in the coming year. Sacrifices, both animal and occasionally human, were central to certain religious rites. Animals such as llamas, guinea pigs, and birds were offered to the gods, often adorned with textiles or precious metals. Human sacrifices were rare and reserved for extraordinary occasions, such as natural disasters, the death of a ruler, or major military campaigns. The individuals chosen were treated with reverence and believed to serve as messengers to the gods, reinforcing the connection between the divine and the earthly realm. Local deities and spirits, known as wakas, were also integral to religious life. Mountains, rivers, lakes, and rocks were considered sacred, and each had its own spiritual significance. Communities maintained shrines and performed rituals at these sites to ensure protection, fertility, and harmony with nature. Offerings ranged from food and textiles to incense and ceremonial objects, emphasizing reciprocity between humans and the spiritual world. Religion was closely linked to governance. The Sapa Inca was both a political leader and high priest, embodying divine authority. By framing leadership as a sacred duty, the state ensured loyalty and obedience, as rebellion was not only a political offense but a spiritual transgression. Priests advised the emperor, performed ceremonies, and maintained sacred knowledge, bridging the spiritual and administrative spheres. Festivals also served practical and social functions. They reinforced the agricultural calendar, mobilized labor for communal projects, and provided opportunities for training, entertainment, and socialization. Rituals aligned with celestial events, such as solstices and equinoxes, connecting human activity to cosmic cycles. This integration of the sacred, the social, and the practical exemplified the holistic worldview of the Incas. Religious ceremonies involved multiple forms of expression. Music, using instruments like panpipes, drums, and flutes, accompanied dances and processions. Costumes, headdresses, and masks symbolized deities, animals, or cosmological concepts. Public spaces, temples, and ceremonial plazas were transformed into arenas of spiritual and communal engagement, reinforcing social hierarchy and cultural identity. Agriculture, central to Inca life, was deeply intertwined with religious practice. Rituals sought divine favor for rainfall, harvests, and livestock. Offerings to Pachamama, the Earth Mother, ensured soil fertility and environmental balance. By connecting spiritual observances to practical outcomes, the Incas maintained harmony between nature, society, and the state. Education and religious knowledge was systematic. Children learned the stories of the gods, ceremonial procedures, and sacred dances, ensuring that spiritual traditions were passed down across generations. Elite youth trained in priesthood and administration, while commoners participated in community rituals, reinforcing collective memory, identity, and loyalty. The construction and maintenance of temples and shrines reflected religious priorities. The Coricancha in Cusco, adorned with gold, was a focal point for worship and imperial authority. Temples were aligned with celestial events, symbolizing cosmic order and divine sanction. Regional shrines integrated local traditions with imperial ideology, fostering unity while respecting diversity. In summary, religion and festivals were inseparable from Inca governance, culture, and daily life. Through ceremonies, sacrifices, processions, and rituals, the Incas expressed devotion, maintained social cohesion, and connected human activity to cosmic forces. Festivals marked important agricultural, political, and spiritual milestones, while temples, shrines, and sacred landscapes reinforced divine authority. Religion permeated every aspect of existence, shaping a civilization that harmonized the practical, the aesthetic, and the spiritual in one integrated system. Part 17. Medicine and Health. Medicine in the Inca Empire was a complex system combining practical knowledge, spiritual beliefs, and community care. Despite the lack of modern technology, the Incas developed sophisticated methods to treat illnesses, perform surgeries, and maintain public health. Medical practices were deeply intertwined with religion, agriculture, and daily life, reflecting the holistic approach of Inca society to human well-being. Herbal medicine formed the foundation of Inca healthcare. Healers, known as pacos or shamans, used plants, roots, and minerals to treat a wide range of ailments. Leaves from coca, mint, and other native plants were employed for pain relief, digestive problems, respiratory conditions, and fatigue. Knowledge of medicinal herbs was passed down orally through generations, with careful attention to dosage, preparation, and combinations of ingredients. The high Andes, with their diverse microclimates, provided an extensive pharmacopoeia, enabling healers to adapt treatments to specific illnesses. Surgery was also practiced, most notably trepanation, the surgical removal of part of the skull. Evidence from skeletal remains shows that the Incas performed trepanation to relieve intracranial pressure, treat injuries, or address neurological disorders. Remarkably, many patients survived these operations, suggesting advanced knowledge of antisepsis, hemostasis, and postoperative care. Bone healing patterns indicate that patients received attentive care, including herbal applications and immobilization. Spirituality was inseparable from medicine. Illness was often attributed to imbalances between the body, nature, and spiritual forces. Rituals, prayers, and offerings accompanied treatments, invoking the aid of deities or spirits. Healing ceremonies could involve music, chants, and symbolic gestures, reflecting the belief that physical and spiritual health were interconnected. Patients were treated as both biological and social beings, with care addressing mind, body, and community relationships. Public health was a communal responsibility. The Incas emphasized hygiene, clean water, and proper food storage. Villages and cities had organized systems for waste disposal, and aqueducts and fountains supplied potable water to households and ceremonial centers. Community labor ensured the maintenance of terraces, irrigation channels, and roads, indirectly supporting health by stabilizing food production and reducing famine risk. These measures contributed to population resilience in challenging environments. Nutrition was considered part of medicine. A varied diet, including potatoes, maize, quinoa, legumes, and meat from llamas and alpacas, ensured essential nutrients. Foods were often prepared in ways believed to enhance healing properties, with certain plants reserved for specific health purposes. Seasonal and regional availability influenced dietary practices, while festivals and offerings reinforced the cultural and spiritual dimensions of nourishment. Healers specialized in various fields. Some focused on bones and injuries, others on digestive disorders or respiratory illnesses. Midwives played a crucial role in childbirth, employing herbal remedies, massages, and positioning techniques to ensure the health of mother and child. Knowledge of anatomy, physiology, and environmental influences allowed healers to diagnose conditions, advise on preventive measures, and treat a wide range of maladies. Community care was essential in the Inca health system. Families, neighbors, and local leaders participated in supporting sick individuals. Work obligations were adjusted for the ill, and community rituals reinforced collective responsibility. Social cohesion and mutual aid were integral to survival, particularly in remote highland areas where access to healers or specialized knowledge might be limited. Preventive medicine was emphasized alongside treatment. Observations of weather patterns, seasonal changes, and environmental hazards informed agricultural planning, diet, and hygiene practices. Clean water, proper storage of crops, and avoidance of contaminated sites reduced the incidence of disease. Spiritual observances and offerings were also considered preventive measures, ensuring balance between humans and the spiritual world. In summary, Inca medicine and health practices were a sophisticated blend of empirical knowledge, spiritual understanding, and social organization. Herbal remedies, surgery, preventive care, nutrition, and community support formed a comprehensive system that addressed both physical and spiritual well-being. By integrating medicine with religion, agriculture, and social structure, the Incas created a resilient healthcare system capable of sustaining millions across a challenging and diverse landscape, leaving a legacy of ingenuity, compassion, and practical wisdom. Part 18. Education and Knowledge. Education in the Inca Empire was essential for maintaining social cohesion, governance, and cultural continuity. Unlike modern formal schooling, Inca education was practical, hierarchical, and deeply intertwined with daily life, labor obligations, religion, and social structure. Knowledge was transmitted orally, through apprenticeship, observation, and participation, ensuring that essential skills, cultural values, and administrative practices were preserved across generations. From a young age, children learned the roles and responsibilities expected of them within their communities. Boys and girls received gender-specific instruction that prepared them for future contributions. Boys often trained in agriculture, herding, construction, or military skills, while girls learned domestic tasks, weaving, textile production, and ceremonial duties. This early education ensured that every member of society could fulfill their roles effectively and contribute to communal well-being. Elite youth, particularly the sons of nobles, received more specialized instruction. They were trained in administration, record-keeping using quipus, religious rituals, and governance. Apprenticeship with experienced officials and priests provided hands-on experience in managing resources, organizing labor, and conducting ceremonies. These young leaders learned not only practical skills, but also the ideological foundations of the empire, preparing them to maintain loyalty, order, and cultural continuity. Apprenticeship was a central method of learning. Skills were passed from master to student, whether in weaving, pottery, metallurgy, or architecture. This system ensured high levels of craftsmanship, maintained traditions, and allowed knowledge to adapt to regional variations. Community workshops, ceremonial centers, and state projects served as educational sites, combining practical training with social and spiritual instruction. Oral tradition played a critical role in education. Stories, myths, genealogies, and historical accounts were recited to teach moral lessons, cultural values, and political history. Narratives emphasized the deeds of ancestors, the power of the Sapa Inca, and the importance of harmony with nature and the spiritual world. Oral instruction ensured that even without written texts, essential knowledge was preserved and disseminated throughout the empire. Religious instruction was closely linked to civic education. Children and youth learned about rituals, offerings, festivals, and sacred geography. They were taught the symbolism of temples, plazas, and sacred objects, integrating spiritual understanding with practical duties. This religious knowledge reinforced social cohesion, obedience, and cultural identity, creating a sense of shared purpose across diverse communities. Military training was another educational aspect. Young men learned the use of weapons, strategy, terrain navigation, and discipline. Training exercises and participation in campaigns instilled loyalty, physical resilience, and practical skills necessary for defense and expansion. Military education also fostered leadership abilities, coordination, and an understanding of social responsibility within the context of the empire. Agricultural knowledge was taught through observation and participation. Children assisted in planting, irrigation, terrace maintenance, and crop harvesting, learning techniques adapted to specific climates and terrains. Knowledge of seasonal cycles, soil management, crop rotation, and irrigation was passed down orally and experientially, ensuring sustainability and food security. This hands-on approach combined technical skill with a deep understanding of environmental and spiritual principles. Administration and record-keeping formed a specialized domain of education. The use of quipus for census, tribute, labor, and resource management required trained officials capable of encoding and decoding complex information. This training ensured accurate governance, efficient resource distribution, and rapid response to social or environmental challenges. Administrative education reinforced the integration of labor, economy, and central authority. In summary, Inca education and knowledge systems were holistic, practical, and deeply embedded in daily life. Through apprenticeship, oral tradition, hands-on experience, and hierarchical instruction, the Incas transmitted skills, values, and cultural knowledge essential for sustaining the empire. Education integrated practical work, spiritual understanding, governance, and social responsibility, creating a resilient, adaptive society capable of thriving across the challenging landscapes of the Andes. The Inca approach to knowledge ensured that traditions, expertise, and loyalty were preserved, shaping generations of citizens capable of contributing to the empire's stability, prosperity, and cultural legacy. Part 19. Astronomy and Calendar Systems. Astronomy was a cornerstone of Inca civilization, guiding agriculture, religious festivals, and architectural planning. The Incas observed the sun, moon, stars, and planets, interpreting celestial movements to maintain harmony between human activity, nature, and the divine. Their understanding of astronomical cycles was sophisticated, enabling accurate prediction of seasonal changes, optimal planting and harvesting periods, and timing of important rituals. The sun god, Inti, held central importance in Inca cosmology. Temples, plazas, and observatories were aligned with solar events, particularly solstices and equinoxes. The Coricancha in Cusco, the most sacred temple, featured windows and niches positioned to mark sunrise and sunset during key dates of the solar calendar. These alignments allowed priests and astronomers to track the passage of time and coordinate agricultural and ceremonial activities across the empire. Calendars were closely tied to agricultural cycles. The Incas used both solar and lunar observations to organize planting, irrigation, and harvesting. Certain crops thrived at specific times of the year, and accurate calendrical knowledge was essential to ensure food security. Seasonal festivals were timed according to celestial events, linking religious observance with practical agricultural planning. This integration of astronomy and agriculture exemplified the holistic approach of the Incas to life and survival. Observatories and sacred sites served as centers for celestial observation. Structures such as Intihuatana, literally, itching post of the sun, acted as solar markers and ritual sites. Shadows, light, and angles were carefully observed to measure solstices, equinoxes, and the sun's zenith passage. These measurements informed both ceremonial scheduling and agricultural decisions, demonstrating the practical utility of astronomical knowledge. Priests and trained specialists, often called Yachawasi, were responsible for observing, recording, and interpreting celestial phenomena. They monitored the movement of the sun, moon, stars, and planets, noting patterns, eclipses, and anomalies. This knowledge was transmitted orally, using mnemonic devices and symbolic representations, ensuring that successive generations retained accurate observational records. Lunar and stellar cycles were also important. The moon influenced ceremonial events, tides, and planting schedules, while specific constellations were associated with myths, deities, and seasonal markers. The observation of stars such as the Pleiades provided predictive information for rainfall, crop cycles, and livestock management. Celestial phenomena were thus integrated into both practical life and spiritual belief, reinforcing the interconnectedness of human and cosmic order. Architecture reflected astronomical knowledge. Temples, plazas, and agricultural terraces were oriented according to solar, lunar, and stellar patterns. Roads, bridges, and fortresses were planned to maintain symbolic and practical alignment with celestial markers. Even simple markers, such as standing stones or carved rocks, served as observational tools, allowing communities to track seasonal changes and coordinate communal activities. Religion and astronomy were inseparable. Festivals, sacrifices, and rituals were scheduled based on celestial observations, ensuring that spiritual obligations aligned with environmental cycles. The synchronization of ritual, agriculture, and governance through astronomy strengthened social cohesion, reinforced the authority of the Sapa Inca, and maintained the perception of cosmic harmony. Astronomical knowledge also served political purposes. Accurate predictions of solstices and eclipses demonstrated the wisdom of the Sapa Inca and his priests, enhancing authority and inspiring loyalty. Festivals timed with celestial events created public spectacles that reinforced imperial ideology, linking natural phenomena with divine sanction and social order. In summary, astronomy and calendar systems were essential to the Inca Empire, guiding agriculture, religion, architecture, and governance. Solar, lunar, and stellar observations informed planting, harvesting, ceremonial scheduling, and political authority. Temples, observatories, and sacred markers enabled precise measurements, while priests and specialists ensured knowledge continuity. By integrating celestial observation with practical, religious, and political life, the Incas created a civilization in which the cosmos, society, and state were harmoniously interconnected, demonstrating an advanced understanding of time, space, and human environment interaction. Part 20. Legacy and Influence of the Inca Empire. The Inca Empire left an enduring legacy that continues to influence modern societies across South America. Despite the collapse of the empire in the early 16th century due to Spanish conquest, the achievements of the Incas in administration, agriculture, architecture, and culture continue to inspire and shape contemporary life. Their innovations, organizational systems, and cultural practices provide a remarkable window into one of the most sophisticated civilizations in human history. Agricultural techniques developed by the Incas remain relevant today. Terracing, irrigation systems, and crop rotation methods are still used in the Andes, enabling sustainable farming in challenging mountainous terrain. Traditional crops such as potatoes, quinoa, maize, and beans continue to form the basis of regional diets and are celebrated worldwide for their nutritional value. The ingenuity of Inca farming methods demonstrates an enduring understanding of ecology, adaptation, and resource management. Inca roads, bridges, and infrastructure laid the foundation for modern transportation networks in the Andes. Many contemporary routes follow the paths of the Capacnan, connecting communities and facilitating trade and communication. The engineering prowess of the Incas, reflected in stone bridges, stairways, and tunnels, continues to be admired for its durability, precision, and harmony with natural landscapes. Modern engineers study these constructions to understand sustainable building practices and the integration of infrastructure with difficult terrain. Architecture and urban planning from the Inca era also left a lasting imprint. Cities such as Cusco, Ollantaytambo, and Machu Picchu showcase advanced knowledge of stonework, drainage, and structural stability. Techniques such as finely cut stone blocks that fit together without mortar demonstrate both technical mastery and aesthetic sophistication. These sites attract millions of visitors annually, serving as cultural and historical touchstones while preserving the memory of Inca ingenuity. Cultural traditions, including festivals, music, and textile production, persist in modern Andean communities. Weaving, pottery, and metalwork techniques continue to be taught and practiced, maintaining continuity with pre-Columbian heritage. Religious ceremonies, though often syncretized with Catholicism, retain elements of Inca cosmology, honoring the sun, earth, and ancestral spirits. This blending of ancient and modern practices highlights the resilience and adaptability of Inca cultural identity. The Quechua and Aymara languages, spoken by millions today, are direct descendants of the linguistic traditions promoted by the Incas. Language continues to transmit stories, customs, and knowledge, preserving historical memory and fostering a sense of community. Education programs and cultural initiatives aim to revitalize these languages, ensuring that the intangible heritage of the Inca civilization remains alive and relevant. Inca governance and social organization offer lessons in administration, coordination, and social cohesion. Systems of labor, redistribution, and resource management demonstrate the effectiveness of centralized planning combined with local participation. Modern scholars study these systems to understand how large, diverse populations can be integrated through organizational ingenuity rather than coercion alone. Tourism and archaeology play a vital role in preserving and sharing Inca heritage. Machu Picchu, Sacsayhuaman, and other archaeological sites provide insight into Inca life, technology, and belief systems. Ongoing research uncovers new information about construction techniques, agricultural innovations, and social structures, deepening our understanding of Inca civilization and inspiring global interest in pre-Columbian history. The spiritual and symbolic influence of the Incas continues to resonate. Reverence for nature, agricultural cycles, and celestial phenomena remains part of Andean life. Concepts of reciprocity, communal labor, and respect for the environment echo the principles that underpin the Inca worldview, demonstrating that their philosophy and ethical frameworks remain relevant in contemporary discussions about sustainability and community. In summary, the Inca Empire's legacy is multifaceted, encompassing agriculture, infrastructure, culture, language, governance, and spirituality. Their achievements continue to inspire modern society, providing lessons in resilience, innovation, and adaptation. From terraced mountainsides to vibrant cultural traditions, the influence of the Incas is alive, bridging centuries and connecting the past to the present. As our journey through the Inca Empire comes to an end, we hope you've enjoyed exploring this remarkable civilization. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like.